Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, September is Happy Cat Month, which I am absolutely in favor of as a massive, massive cat fan, and no surprise, it didn't take anything to convince me to put together an episode dedicated to all things cat. And lucky you, this week is that episode. So what I've got for you today is a selection of films all about cats. I have a couple animated features in here with very, very different storylines. I have a couple documentaries that are about people who care for cats, and then some really fascinating cats themselves. And I think whether or not you are a cat fan, and that's absolutely me being honest, not even me trying to make everybody a cat fan, but even if you're not somebody who is drawn to cats, I think you'll still find these stories really, really interesting and really entertaining and engaging. So please do check them out. If none of these stories happens to catch your interest, make sure you check out our streaming services. Those are CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy. There are thousands upon thousands of films available on them, and they're all available for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. So without any further ado, let's get on to the Rex. Okay, kicking things off today with our feline-focused episode is 2011's The Rabbi's Cat, and that is available actually on both Hoopla and on Canopy, so I'll put both links in the description box below. The Rabbi's Cat is an absolutely fascinating French animated feature. Yes, I said French. It will have English subtitles. Totally worth it anyway. I had been meaning to sort of pick it up for ages and ages, but something else has always caught my eye in the past, and I'm so glad that I had the chance to watch it because it really is a fascinating, fascinating story. Barring my love from animation, the storyline itself and the characters and the voiceover acting is really, really solid. So in Rabbi's Cat, we are in 1920s Algeria within the small but really close-knit Jewish community there, and we're following a rabbi and his daughter, and at the opening they have this cat who mysteriously is given the gift of speech, so he can speak French. I don't want to give away why he can speak French. It's kind of weird and convoluted and absolutely perfect at the same time, because there's definitely this sort of marvelous, very, very French sarcastic vibe to the whole story at the same time. It's really, really perfect. If you watch much French film, you'll 100% know what I'm talking about. So anyway, the rabbi and his cat have a very different relationship once the cat starts to speak his language, and they challenge each other. They try and make each other look at things in new ways, and through a series of really odd circumstances, one of which involves an escaped Soviet painter, like you do, they end up going on this sort of quest across the Algerian desert. And I know it probably sounds weird and totally out there, and it is, but in the best of ways. The relationship between the rabbi and his cat, or it's actually his daughter's cat, but it's his cat too, is really kind of fascinating to watch progress, because at a certain point it's weird because the cat is almost his antagonist, but not, and the way that the relationship cycles from pet and owner to antagonistic verbal sparring partner to pet and owner again, it's really cool to watch that cycle through. There are a lot of really fascinating elements throughout the film that a focus on religion and differing viewpoints of religion, conflicts between different people of different colors. It packs a lot of themes within a fairly short time frame. I think it's about an hour and a half, but at no point does it feel particularly rushed. It's just there's a lot going on, and you really do have to pay attention because you've got a lot of different people's stories melding together into one, and it manages to do that in a really organic feeling way. It doesn't just feel like there are tons of storylines shoehorned into this small space. No, it really flows incredibly well. Whether we're talking about like the adventure aspect of this quest across the desert, to just like the funny little verbal sparring going on between this incredibly sarcastic, incredibly French cat and his owner, the more loving but very layered relationship between the cat and his female owner, to the relationships that you see between the human characters as well. The Soviet painter is a really interesting guy who develops relationships with different people along this quest as well. But again, you just get really caught up in the whole storyline. And whether we're talking about the beginning when we're seeing the first strings of that sort of antagonistic, jarring, verbal sparring relationship between the rabbi and the cat, or we're talking about sort of the several harrowing moments during this desert quest, or any of it really does pull you in. So if you're looking for a funny, entertaining, uh, philosophical adventure story, absolutely check out The Rabbi's Cat. It was so much more than I expected. I don't know, I just expected French animation, which is absolutely gorgeous and amazing in itself, but like this was way more than what I thought I was going to get. So please do check out The Rabbi's Cat. It's available on both Hoopla and on Canopy. I know, like I said, some people are not fans of subtitles, but this one's absolutely worth it. Please check it out. Okay, moving right on to another animated feature. This one is also available on both Hoopla and on Canopy, and this is 2010's A Cat in Paris. Now, the lovely thing about A Cat in Paris is you can get both the original French language track and the really well done English language dub. So Cat in Paris was made in 2010. It actually was even one of the nominees for the Academy Awards in that following year. And the French track is amazing. If you like the original language dubs and you want to stick with that, 100% excellent performances all the way around. But if you much prefer an English language track, the English language track on A Cat in Paris is phenomenal. You have really familiar actors in the cast playing some anchor characters. Marcia Gay Harden, Matthew Modine is in there. You've also got Steve Blum, who you might not know the name, but if you're a fan of anime, you definitely know the voice. He was the English language track's Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop anime. You've also got tons of other really familiar voices if you follow anime or video games in there, and they all do an excellent job. So, again, whether you like original language French track or you like English language track, you can't miss. Fantastic. So, on to what the actual storyline is. So, in A Cat in Paris, as mentioned, it is a French animated film. I love French animation. I really do. I think they have a phenomenal aesthetic. This one is a caper thriller film. So originally we're following a young girl who is at a difficult point in her life. Her parents were police officers, and unfortunately her father was killed recently by this big time crime boss. Her mother is dedicated to bringing down this particular crime lord and being able to get vengeance for her husband's death. And the little girl is, at the point when we meet her in the story, mute from the trauma. And really, the only thing she's connecting to is her mother and her cat, Dino. Uh, Dino, unbeknownst to anyone, is leading a double life. So he has this life with this little girl and her mother, but he also moonlights as, wait for it, a cat burglar's assistant. I know that sounds really, really ridiculous, and it is, but it's so good too. Um, so Dino at nights goes out to assist Nico, who is a incredibly skillful cat burglar who definitely knows parkour. I mean, they never say he knows parkour, but it's very clear. And I just again think that's so French. That he's a parkour rooftop leaping cat burglar in Paris. I mean, it's kind of perfect. Anyway, one night the little girl she decides to follow Dino out onto his adventure. She has no idea where he's going, what he's doing, but she's curious, and it's something to keep her attention away from her grief, right? So she follows Dino out, and she ends up getting caught up in a whole lot of trouble. A whole lot of trouble that actually forces her to cross paths with her father's murderer. And there are some seriously scary moments in this. I mean, you really do fear for her life. You really do fear for, of course, Dino and Nico's lives as well, the cat burglar and the cat. Because the crime boss is really, really horrible. I mean, a lot of times in animated features, especially like this, because I double checked on Common Sense Media, and A Cat in Paris, Common Sense Media says 8+, so slightly older children, but definitely still something that kids can watch. But as anyone who's watched much Disney even knows, like, cartoons can really go there with with emotional moments and with beats that are incredibly intense, and Cat in Paris has a lot of those, like a lot of them. So you would enjoy it if you're looking for a thriller, whether you're a little kid or an adult. It is really edge of your seat kind of thrilling in a lot of spots. So as mentioned, the little girl ends up in a number of very difficult situations. There are people who've been planted in her and her mother's lives that are not what they seem, and she ends up relying a great deal on the cat burglar Nico. And Nico, at a certain point, is just desperate to protect this little girl. So the crux of the film, like the vast majority of it, really, it moves very quickly, is taken up by this little girl trying to escape the crime boss who killed her father. So, as mentioned, you've got tons of really intense scenes. You've got a lot of action. There's a lot of animated parkour, which is, again, really, really fantastic. You've got really, really interesting relationships being shown on screen between the little girl, her mother, between the little girl and Nico, between the little girl and the cat. I mean, and the burglar and the cat too. Like, they very definitely have a rapport. And the cat knows what's going on. It's just, I really, really enjoyed it. I had such a good time with it. I sometimes when I'm putting together the text for these episodes, I'll pause in between scenes of a review and write down notes and everything like that. But I just watched this straight through, like no pausing, no stops. I was that caught up into it, and I think you will be too. So if you enjoy sort of caper films, if you enjoy films about the criminal world, if you just really like a good, solid thriller and adventure story, make sure you check out A Cat in Paris. Again, you've got 2 tracks, so it doesn't matter if you like subtitles. If you don't, you've got options. You've got a really, really fantastic English language cast. You've got a really, really fantastic French language cast. It's awesome. And the animation is really, really cool. It's all hand done, so it's not your typical anymore anyway CGI style. it's very distinctive and I really, really enjoy it. So if you like art, this is 100% going to be up your alley. So again, available on both Hoopla and on Canopy. A Cat in Paris. You absolutely need to watch it. It's actually going to be my pick of the week. Okay, so my next pick is available on Hoopla, and it's perfect for people who are looking for really heartwarming documentaries dedicated to people who have kind of a shared cause and mentality about things, and that is 2019's Cat People. Cat People is all about the relationship between cats, particularly strays, and those who care for them. Now, this film is from filmmaker Asako Ushio, who describes herself as a lifelong cat person. And as she was going through a particular point in her life, she really started to ask herself what causes us as human beings to connect so well with cats, those of us who happen to do so. What makes the dynamic what it is. And she explores this connection by interviewing and examining the lives of a number of different people. She focuses on a group of really, really dedicated TNR, and that's trap, neuter, release volunteers, including a woman who has dedicated herself to in LA to organizing other volunteers like herself to go into the communities and do TNR. But she's also managed to attract like quite a large following of people, including these two adorable little girls who are also developing that sort of community-minded spirit where they will go out to different areas. They will do the process that adults normally do, which is sort of do reconnaissance, ask people in the neighborhoods, have you seen any strays? Like, what do you notice about them? So on and so forth, so that they can gather enough information to start their own TNR program in their own communities. She also travels to Japan to interview members of this community on an island, which is essentially known as Cat Island. It's really quite famous, where there are more stray cats than there are people really on the island, and how that relationship has evolved over the many, many, many years, where in fact the community members left on the island feel that they are actually stewards to these cats. They care for them, they are dedicated to them, they want to make sure that they thrive, but they are essentially allowed to roam free and live their lives in the wild. And it's really, really interesting the things that people say and how they describe these bonds and these relationships between these animals. How it's less of a pet owner situation, and as mentioned, more of a stewardship. They are shepherds. They watch over this flock of cats. Which I know is absolutely not the terminology for it, but that's sort of more how it's viewed than anything else. In between interviews, between tons of people, we also have interviews with this fascinating woman who engineers sort of cat domiciles, like really goes through an involved process creating catwalks from one location to another, to creating very specific kind of resting spaces for cats that they know they'll like, and it's just fascinating. So much math, so much engineering, all for cats. You have interviews with vets who are incredibly dedicated to their process, who volunteer, who are hoping to make a difference in the lives of these stray animals, and all of their stories are so interesting and so engrossing. Like, you really get caught up in everybody's lives. You obviously care for the cats that they're caring for, but it really is just as much about the people in this one, and I really, really loved that aspect of it. I loved how I could understand why you would be pulled into that world of cat volunteer work. So if you are interested in something like this, if you are wanting a documentary that's really well filmed, that has a lot of incredible interviews with people, if you just want to see, different parts of the world and how different parts of the world react to strays and to feral cats, if you are interested in getting involved with this kind of volunteer work in general, definitely check out Cat People. It really was a great documentary, and it's quite short. It's only about an hour, so it'll be a quick watch. So make sure you check it out. Okay, final pick for this week. This one is available on Canopy, and it is 2019's Kedi. Now, I know I have mentioned Kedi in the past, but I couldn't possibly do a Happy Cats episode and not mention this documentary. It is probably one of the best documentaries I've seen in several years. So in Kedi, we are following a number of incredibly distinctively personalitied cats in Istanbul, Turkey. They are part of a population of thousands of stray cats that live in Istanbul and are taken care of by the community. It's just sort of a cultural thing where stray cats are just a part of the city. They are as much a part of the populace as the human beings. And in Kedi, we get to follow a handful of cats who have such distinct, fascinating personalities. I mean, by the end of the documentary, you're just so caught up in their lives. And I know for me, I just really wanted to know more. I wanted to continue to see their day-to-day lives and who they meet and what they do in different seasons, how they react to different situations. And as such, you do feel concerned for them at the same time, or at least I did while I was watching, because, as part of a culture where stray cats aren't always as revered and loved, my initial reaction is almost always, oh, are they going to be okay when it comes to stray and feral cats? But these cats that we follow do very well. They have interesting lives. Obviously, the filmmaker threads together storylines that may or may not be there as far as like what the cat's actually thinking. But what is really cool about Kedi is that the filmmaker also talks to the people who see these cats every day, because anyone who has a cat knows cats love routine. They do certain things at certain times, and they're expecting certain things to happen at certain times. These strays are no different. They know if they go out to this house, or not out to this house, out to this business or that alleyway, they know they're going to be fed at this time or that time. They know they'll get rubs from this person or that person. They have these very full schedules, and it's really, really amazing to watch. And I think that's part of why I got so caught up in it, because each one of these cats we follow, it's like a true slice of life. And being able to hear from the humans in their lives is really, really lovely, because you do hear the genuine affection, the genuine dedication that these people have. These are their cats. They may not live with them. They may not, snuggle down on a rainy night with them, but they still are a part of their everyday life. And I really, really loved that, how so many people can be so connected to these animals. You have some really, really interesting insights into Turkish culture in general, things that I wasn't at all familiar with prior to this documentary. And then you just have some really interesting insights brought about by being able to watch all of these cats. So, as I mentioned, all of the cats have very particular personalities. You can tell them apart, even if they looked all the same. They behave in very different ways. But at the same time, there are certain elements of their natures that are the same. Like people do certain things a certain way, and cats do as well. And it's really fascinating to watch those elements come across on screen, how certain behaviors are just cat behaviors. even with personalities that are so different. Like I said, it's just really, really fun to watch. So if you're looking for a beautifully filmed documentary, if you like interviews with people who are very, very much dedicated to their pets, who are very much invested in those lives, who are just generous spirits, check out Kedi. I can't say enough good things about this one. It really is one of my favorite documentaries from the last several years, and uh, I'm not even exaggerating. Probably watched this about half a dozen times at this point, and it never gets old. So if you have not yet seen it, you absolutely need to. It was critically lauded, and it had every reason to be. Again, 2019's Kedi, available on Canopy. Okay, so sadly, that is it for our Happy Cat episode. If you have any recommendations for films featuring cats, whether they be fictional stories or documentaries, please comment with those below. I always love getting recommendations, but especially ones about films featuring cats. If you have any recommendations for me about themes that you would like to see me cover, recommend those too. I definitely need assistance with that. As always, thank you so, so much for tuning in. I love putting lists like this together, especially when they're about topics that I absolutely adore. And it's really, really fun to get to do these deep dives. I mean, there are films that I have never heard of that I've gotten to watch just because of putting these lists together. And I hope that you find these recommendations useful and you get to check out these movies too. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.